How about a big hand for Harold for everything that he does? He is amazing. Let me tell you something about Harold. So tenacious, so persistent, so demanding. He doesn't even take yes for an answer. He keeps asking and asking, and we do the best we can to deliver and deliver. And great to be with Tom Miller and my fellow New Yorker, Peter Gorman, and Kevin O'Connor, Barry Kasnitz, and my good friend, also tenacious, David Billy. Any New Yorkers here today? A few. All right. I'm going to speak to you today as a pretty blunt New Yorkers. New Yorkers are not exactly known for our patience and our diplomacy, so I'm going to speak to you pretty bluntly. Harold knows I have the simplest job in Washington, D.C. Not the easiest, the simplest. My job is to figure out how we defeat 25 House Republican incumbents, win 25 seats, and take the majority for the Democrats. That's my job. I occupy, folks, a very narrow lane, very narrow lane. There are 25 cars in my lane. I got to run those cars off the road. That's my job. My job is to elect a Democratic majority so we can stop these union bashing, collective bargaining repealing, overtime right revoking, middle class destroying, Medicare ending, Social Security privatizing House Republicans. That's my job. That's my job. Now, Harold asked me to tell you how we're going to do this. What's my plan? What's the strategy? What are the tactics? How are we going to win those 25 seats? Before I tell you how we're going to win those 25 seats, let me tell you why it's so important to win those seats. And I'm going to do it in 10 minutes. It won't take me any more than 10 minutes to talk to you about why it's so important and how we're going to do it. I may not be the smartest member of the Congress, although if you listen to some Republicans, you know the competition ain't that stiff. But I am the most serious student of history in Congress. I love history. Everything I know, everything I do as chairman of DCCC is based on history. And I want to share some recent history with you about where we've been and where we are now, and why this is so important to firefighters. There's a great book that I want to commend to your attention. I'm the only guy who speaks and gives you homework, so let me give you some homework. Read this book, Pity the Billionaire, by Thomas Frank. Pity the Billionaire. In this book, Thomas Frank talks about what has happened to us and to unions and to working families since 2008. In 2008, our country's financial system suffered an epic, catastrophic failure. Catastrophic failure. How'd that happen? We had decades of efforts to roll back supervision of the biggest banks and to encourage risky financial experimentation. We built these huge financial conglomerates that became so big that they became too big to fail. They created these incredibly risky financial instruments. They made loans that they shouldn't have made. They invented these instruments called collateral debt obligations and credit default swaps. They sliced and diced mortgages, put them in a blender, pressed play, muddled them, spit out stuff that nobody could understand. They overextended themselves. Then in 2008, the whole house of cards falls. We lose $16 trillion of household wealth. We lose millions and millions of jobs. And who do we blame? We blame firefighters. We blame not the people who made bad loans, but the people who took the loans and purchased their houses. We don't blame the bank, we blame the worker. We don't regulate the financial institutions, we start to roll back overtime rights. We don't clean up the banks, we start to close down collective bargaining. We don't reform the financial services industry, we begin to revoke union rights. We don't rebuild the economy by rebuilding unions, they try and rebuild the economy by busting unions. We pity the billionaire and we fire the firefighter. How does that make sense? I introduced a bill that would reclaim the bonuses that we gave to these people who engaged in risky behavior, and I got slaughtered by Republicans who said, why are you taking this out on these people who got the bonuses? The same people who pitied the billionaires had no problem firing the firefighter, laying off teachers, busting unions, destroying the middle class, hurting working families. Enough. Enough. We need to retake the Congress so that we can rebuild the middle class, so that we can reignite the American dream, so that we can rebuild unions, so that we can value firefighters, not vilify firefighters. That's what this fight is about, ladies and gentlemen. It's about responsibility for who got us into this mess. Now, that's why we've got to win. Let me tell you how we're going to do it. I was asked when I became chairman of the DCCC to put together a cold-blooded, clear-eyed strategy to take the House back. And I'm going to tell you what that strategy is. This will take me less than 2 minutes. And it's not based on any sense of optimism. Optimism has never won an election in all of human history. Wishful thinking doesn't win elections. You got to be cold-blooded, you got to be clear, you got to understand exactly what's going on in these districts. So let me tell you how we're going to do this in the most conservative, pessimistic modeling that I can come up with. We need 25 seats to stop this war on working families and this war on unions. 25 seats. Right now, as of this minute, this changes in real time, Harold, as you know, because of redistricting, but right now, as of this minute, there are 45 districts in this country with a Republican member of Congress, but that voted for President Obama in 2008. 45 districts that have a Republican incumbent but voted for President Obama. Now, some of my colleagues believe that we can take all 45 back. No, not going to happen. That's overly optimistic. It's a fantasy. We're not going to win all 45 back. But if everything goes wrong, in the most conservative modeling that I can come up with, if the headwinds against us are so strong, the Republicans will win 2/3 of those 45 Obama districts. We win 1/3. That gives us 15. We need 25, 15 in the bank, in the most conservative modeling that we can come up with. 15 in the bank. Now you say, okay, that's 15. Where do you get the other 10? In addition to those 45 Obama Republican districts, there are 18 districts that have a Republican incumbent and voted for John Kerry in 2004. These are rock-solid, Democratic, pro-union, pro-worker, pro-firefighter districts that woke up the day after the election in 2010 queasy because they voted for a Republican incumbent, a Republican that they didn't know. Now, if the Republicans are going to win 2/3 of the Obama Republican districts, we're going to win 2/3 of the Kerry Republican districts. That gives us 12. 15 Obama districts, 12 Kerry districts. That gives us 27. We need 25. So we're there, except not really, because that means we can't afford to lose many of our incumbents. Now, we're going to have 15 to 20 incumbents in pretty brutal districts. We call them our frontliners, in tough districts. Now, here I'm a little bit more optimistic. David and I have discussed this. If these guys could win in 2010, I think they're going to win in 2012. But again, my optimism isn't really going to be helpful to them, is it? Got to be realistic. So if everything goes wrong, even if we lose 1/3 of our frontline incumbents, that means we lose 5 of our incumbents. Takes us down from 27 to 22. We're still in range of 25. And then you add some of those districts that are around the country, one in New York, Mike Grimm's district in Staten Island, Brooklyn, one in Florida, David Rivera in Miami, where the incumbent has some serious ethical challenges. You put it all together, brothers and sisters, we are in range of a Democratic majority that's going to stand up for firefighters and working families and the middle class again. We are in range. And who's going to put us over the top? Who's going to put us over the top? Our candidates. John Oseguera, running in Nevada 3 against Congressman Heck. John Oseguera is a firefighter, became the assistant fire chief, became the leader of the Nevada State House. John Oseguera is not only a firefighter, he's going to put out some fires when he comes to the United States Congress. We're going to elect a firefighter to Congress in John Oseguera. Betty Sutton in Ohio, unbelievable incumbent. Betty Sutton, one of the most courageous incumbents that I've ever come across, running in a tough district. Her husband, former IAFF member. We're going to re-elect Betty Sutton to Congress so that she can continue fighting for our firefighters. It's part of her family. It's part of her DNA. It's part of her values. So here's the bottom line, and I'm going to wrap up here. I cannot stand before my friends and guarantee you an outcome to this election. Can't do it. I am willing to sign an affidavit here, and I'll sign it in blood if you want, that this thing is going to be razor close. And the razor is going to be sharpened and dulled based on the candidates that we have, the districts in play, the resources that we've deployed, and the kind of message that we are advocating. Razor close. You've often heard, I know Harold has heard this a million times, this is the most important election ever. Have you heard this before?
I said it.
You said it, right? This is the most important election ever.
Yeah.
I think it is, but other people may disagree. I will tell you, I'll leave that judgment to you whether this is the most important election ever. I'll guarantee you it's going to be the closest. It's going to be the closest. And my parting message to you is, I can't think of another election where every phone call will make the difference that this election will be, since we're right up against that 25. I cannot think of an election where every single door knock is going to make a difference the way this one will. I can't think of an election where every single firefighter can make a difference by talking to other firefighters. And I can't think of an election where the stakes are higher for the middle class and working families and firefighters and teachers and nurses and unions. I can't think of an election where so much hangs in the balance. In just about 250 days, 225 days actually, we can send a message in Wisconsin, in Ohio, in Indiana, across the country, that if you want to rebuild our economy, you don't wage a war on unions. They are not part of the problem. They are the solution to a middle-class economy. You want to create jobs, you don't lay off a firefighter. You are our partners in expanding the middle class. So in 225 days from today, Harold, I'm asking you for one thing. And my constituents in New York are asking you for one thing. If you want to create jobs, don't lay off a firefighter, lay off a House Republican. Lay off a House Republican. And let's get back to a partnership that values firefighters and unions and working families and doesn't vilify them anymore. Thank you for your work. Thank you for keeping us safe. God bless our firefighters, our troops, our veterans, and God bless America. Thank you.